All right, welcome everybody. This is ArcGIS Indoors, the developer story, name that was given to this presentation a long time ago. So we're going to use that developer story term a little loosely in here. So I guess we can get started. My name is Jeff Archer. I currently work in the 3D content team at Esri, and I'm actually transitioning to the Indoors team officially, and as far as early as next week, I think. So my background, I've been at Esri for almost 18 years. I've worked on primarily internet technology, ArcGIS server, then ArcIMS even before that, and MoIMS, if any MoIMS victims in the audience, probably not. So anyway, internet's always kind of been a thing. Now a couple of years ago I started dabbling with indoor positioning, and that led me to Pat Wallace and a lot of members of the Esri community there in Redlands who do indoor kind of on a day-to-day basis. So ever since then, you know, a year and a half ago, I decided to come and work on this project full time. Actually, it's been almost 2 years. Time flies. So there's a bit.ly link here you guys might want to make note of. I'll show it again later at the end of the session. But right now we have a beta. It's kind of an open beta. So you guys can sign up. When you click on the link, it'll take you to a Google Sheet. You can just put in your contact information, just 4 cells, first, last name, email, and your organization. And we'll contact you with a way that you can download the application onto your Apple device. Right now this is iOS only. Android will be coming soon. But for now it's an iOS only. So I encourage you guys to definitely take it, download it. It works here in the convention center. We'll take a look at it here in a little bit. You guys can give us your feedback and let us know what you think. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go through a little bit of background on ArcGIS Indoors, some of the projects that we've been working on at Esri internally that have kind of come together into this product. Now we're, kind of scary. We're talking about this thing not in terms of individual projects anymore, but as an actual Esri product. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the components that make up ArcGIS Indoors. And then, of course, we'll lead into what are the opportunities for developers. I mean, that's why we're all here. And right now, they're just that. They're opportunities. Developer support is something Esri has always been committed to. I don't think we've ever released a product that didn't have a developer SDK or an API, at least to be able to customize it, if not to take the building blocks and build something that is your own. I think that's certainly the long-term vision with ArcGIS Indoors. But as a beta, right now, I mean, it's still really early in the product life cycle. So for that reason, I have a disclaimer. This is a brand new product. The developer story isn't really done yet. And so what I'm hoping to do in this session is kind of enlist you guys to be early adopters, to use the software. Let us know what you think. If you see places where it doesn't quite hit the mark, for the customers that you work with or the problems that you need to solve, let us know. That can help steer us in the right direction of where we need to offer support for developers to be able to take what we provide and make it your own. So definitely sign up for the beta. And finally, come and talk to us. We're going to be in the showcase at the ArcGIS Indoors kiosk. We have most of the Indoors brain trust here in Palm Springs this week. So if anybody on the Indoors team in the audience, if you guys could just raise your hands. Pat, you're not getting out of this. There you go. Lakshmi, is your hand up? Yeah, all right, good. So yeah, we're going to be rotating in and out of the ArcGIS Indoors kiosk. So come by. I mean, we can give you a more in-depth tour of anything in particular that you're interested in seeing. We'd love to hear from you. So let's get into some background. First, the Earth cooled. Then, no, I'm not going to go that far back. But it seems like, man, I tell you, it seems like just yesterday, there was a prototype application at the UC, I believe it was 2013, and a couple of business partners worked with us to spatially enable a section of the showcase at the San Diego Convention Center. So that was kind of the first pass at doing something like this. We had partners that were trying to get into this space. We worked with them on that prototype. And essentially, it just put a blue dot in the showcase and was just a proof of concept. Like, we could see a map of the showcase, you could see your location in it, and it worked. So I must say, though, the work that went into that application was pretty tedious. All of the data had to be basically hand-drawn. There was no automated process for creating or curating this data. Now, over the next couple of years after that, internally at Esri, we started working on trying to streamline that process of getting from whatever data you happen to have into something that you can use in a GIS specifically. And the fruits of that labor initially were known as the campus editing template. So the campus editing template kind of was a parallel project where essentially it was born out of the community maps program where we had university campuses or other corporate campuses, that kind of thing, that wanted to model the kind of fine-grained outdoor spaces on their campus. So we provided an ArcMap template. There was a geodatabase, kind of a data model, pre-populated with some sample data. And somebody could take this blank map document, take their own GIS data and kind of put it in there, and they would see pretty quickly like what's missing. So we gave them the editing templates that they need to be able to create that information for paved surfaces like sidewalks or furniture like park benches, fountains, that kind of thing. We made it easy for people to kind of get from nothing to a good campus data set. Well, the next logical extension of that is to also model the indoor spaces. So if you can get the spaces between the buildings, it adds even more value if you can have like all the floors of each individual building, say on a university campus. Then you can start to model your experience as you move from building to building. And that application, it was basically you see a screenshot of it here. It was a 3D browser-based application along with some basic data import and curation tools that became known as the ArcGIS the Campus Viewer template. And then, the work continued. And then last year at the user conference, we had our first kind of branded release. This was just something that was available in the ArcGIS Online Gallery, but for the first time we called it ArcGIS Indoors. We called it a tech preview. I like to say that's a nice way of saying unsupported sample. But basically all the pieces were there. And we had people in professional services. We had customers that were taking this toolkit, starting out with some CAD drawings of an indoor space for floor plan information, ending up with some good GIS data, and then publishing that out into a browser-based application, a 3D view of their campus. And they could model the insides of buildings. They could route from point A to point B. There were some pretty significant improvements that were in that ArcGIS Indoors release at the user conference last year. So I don't want to dwell on that too much because we've also been busy since then. I just want to make the point that that was the first time we kind of self-contained everything in ArcGIS Pro. So in one kind of a one-stop shop, you could create the data, make it useful, publish it out as services, and then consume it in an application, all right there in ArcGIS Pro. So that was kind of a big leap forward. So we've also talked about this a lot over the past year. So you guys, has anybody here not heard of ArcGIS Indoors before this week? Are you new to it? Or did everybody know about it? If you're in the developer session, I'd like to think that everybody knew about it. Well, that's great. That means the word's getting out. So what does it look like today? I kind of like to ask the question all the time. People, it's funny. We've been giving these presentations for a couple of years. The first time I gave an indoor presentation was 2 years ago at the Dev Summit. And you could really see the wheels start to turn in people's heads because, indoors is always something that we never really thought about as GIS professionals, right? Because it was like, I've never seen it work. We've seen indoor maps and other, some places on the internet or, when you're trying to find a Starbucks, sometimes you could see indoor spaces in there, but always a little bit lacking, but never like as a supported Esri GIS thing. So when we present ArcGIS Indoors, it's interesting to see how people think about how they might apply that to spaces in their own office when they get back home. And I like to ask the question all the time, like how many of our customers have a building? Most of them, So, and those buildings have owners, they have operators, they have maintenance tasks they need to perform. In cases of something like a university or a shopping mall, there are people who visit that space. They may have different needs than the people who actually own the space. They're not concerned with maintenance and that kind of stuff. They just want to find where the food court is or, get from one class to another. It's a funny little anecdote. I just came out of a session I gave right before this one. that was all the way on the complete opposite end of the convention center. And it reminded me, I went to Texas A&M University, and if anybody has ever been there, it's massive. It's like super spread out. The one thing they have is cheap land, and they use it. So it just, I had one semester in graduate school, I had one class in the O&M building, which is complete on one end of the campus, and another class in Research Park, which is completely all the way on the opposite side of the campus. And there was no physical way I could get from that class to the other class on time. I had 20 minutes, and there was no way to do it. The best shot I had was on a bicycle if I didn't hit any red lights, or if there wasn't a train going through campus. If any of those things happened, I couldn't do it. And I think about that all the time because this is potentially an application of this software, right? We can use ArcGIS Indoors in that campus environment to throw up a flag and say, hey, unless you got a helicopter, you can't make it from this class to that class. So, and right now, today, you just have to make that decision. You have to use your mental map to say, well, I can't make that trip. Well, it'd be nice to have something that could do that. It'd be nice to have an app for that. And now we're getting closer every day, I think. So huge market potential. We got to start somewhere. So ArcGIS Indoors today is, essentially it's ArcGIS platform solution. So we have the cloud infrastructure. We have ArcGIS portal. We have ArcGIS online organizations. We can use the ArcGIS desktop. We have an add-in for ArcGIS Pro that we're working on. We have geoprocessing tools that can help streamline the effort of getting data created. You can then publish that to Portal or ArcGIS Online. You can consume that then as a mobile map package in a native mobile app or as live map or scene services. You can also publish network services for doing point-to-point routing. In addition, we have certain parts of the platform that we can use. One example is the operations dashboard. This is part of the platform. We, as a prototype, we said, hey, let's try to put an indoor map in the operations dashboard. Well, it works. So, and you can even switch floors, and you can see all sorts of neat dials and gauges and stuff about what's going on in the indoor space. Pretty fascinating. So here's kind of the elevator pitch. This is courtesy of Pat Wallace, sitting over here on my right. It's a complete floor-aware location platform providing maps, data, and location information for indoor spaces. And we talked a little bit about some of these audiences that we want to support, some of the use cases that they have. Pat and Nitin, the product manager for ArcGIS Indoors, these guys have been thinking about this for a while. They interface with customers. They find out what do these guys need to do. And they kind of boil that down into use cases, personas that we can use to actually drive what the product's going to look like. Indoor environments are purpose-built for occupant needs. There's a whole other discussion on architecture that we could have here. But basically, it's about the people that need to use that space. So we want to provide with ArcGIS Indoors the tools that they need in that environment to be able to optimize their experience, whether they're a customer or a visitor or a student or an owner, asset manager, whatever it is that they need to get done. So what's in the box? Well, right now that basically starts with whatever data that you have. And in a lot of cases, that's none. So the first hurdle that you have to get over in dealing with ArcGIS Indoors is what data are you starting with? In some cases, it's actually better to start with no data than to start with really bad data. It's always kind of a touchy conversation. A customer comes to us and says, hey, ArcGIS Indoors, I'm fired up, man, let's do it. And we get through that, and you say, oh, that's great. We'd love to help you. What kind of data do you have? Oh, I got these CAD drawings. They're excellent. And then you open it up and look at it, and everything's on layer 0. And you just kind of have to, I hate to break it to you, but what you have is not really usable. We've got a lot of stories about people that come to us with all sorts of stuff. Old blueprints from the 1920s. We haven't quite topped my Rocky Mountain, Silverton, Colorado story where they kept the survey maps on old burlap sacks that were done in the 1800s. So I haven't quite found that yet, but if we keep digging, I bet we'll find somebody that's got that. So what we want to enable people to do is, whether they have data to start with or they don't, is to be able to get that into a data model that's suitable for indoors. And we've defined that as the ArcGIS Indoors information model. So once you have the data in there, go through the conversion process. Maybe you create data from scratch. And if you do that, we want to provide the editing tools, templates, attribute assistance to be able to create the data that you need to be able to consume in the applications that you guys would build or the ones that are included with the software. Once you have all that data, you're going to want to configure that into 2D and 3D maps and scenes. You can publish those to Portal. You can publish them to ArcGIS Online, create mobile map packages, and then you can get that into mobile applications, web applications, or custom applications. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just coding against a 2D map service or a 3D scene service or a mobile map package. You're just using the ArcGIS platform. It just happens to be indoors. And that's kind of a segue into getting a little bit more into what we're going to talk about for developer opportunities here in a minute. So just really quickly, a note about the roadmap. Please don't record this, and subject to change. Last year at the user conference, we released a alpha version of an iOS app. We got some great feedback from people that use that at the San Diego Convention Center. We also had around 50 internal users and about 10 external users, so we learned a lot from that experience. Just the way that people would use it at a convention center there, so we kind of rolled that in. As we come through to January this year, now we have a limited beta release in January of the iOS app, and as of this week, we have kind of an alpha version of the web viewer. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. And the Android iOS app is under development. It'll be out soon. And then for the user conference this year, what we'd like to have is a public beta for the Android iOS application to have the web application, the combo 2D and 3D web application ready for some public scrutiny in some form. So now then by the end of the year, we'd like to have the Android app complete. We'd like to have the web viewer complete. And essentially, we're looking at having a beta version of the dashboard. And then also the data creation and curation tools. That sounds easy when you say it fast, but there's a whole lot of code that goes into creating an add-in that can start with a questionable CAD file and output really good GIS data. So there's a lot of work that we want to do there. The way we think about that is that's really where you build the foundation of making a good indoors app. When you make good data, you make it so that you can kind of mix and match it into whatever workflow you need to support. There's really a lot of payoff for that investment down the road. So we're spending a lot of time on that section of it. So finally, where are the opportunities for developers? So we've kind of gone through a quick nickel tour of starting on the desktop, starting with some kind of data, getting it into the ArcGIS information model, publishing that to Portal, to ArcGIS Online, and then consuming that in web applications or in native mobile applications. So let's take a look at that again and say, for each one of those stages, where are the opportunities for developers? And I think starting on the desktop, this is what we do internally, right? So we do a lot of work with Python. We use Python, script together geoprocessing to kind of take the data that we have, bring it into the ArcGIS Indoors information model, identify what are the key pieces of information that are not there, and then try to make a system where it's easy to fill in the gaps for that indoor information. Now, we can also kind of customize the experience in ArcGIS Pro to be more suitable to ArcGIS Indoors, and we can do that through the Pro SDK. We're working on creating an add-in at this point. At some point, it might even be an extension. Still don't know at this point. Still early. But for now, we're looking at this as an add-in, and the Pro SDK kind of gives us some really unique opportunities to even do something as simple as customize a ribbon. So when you install the add-in, if you click on a data set that's in the ArcGIS Indoors information model, we present some other specific ArcGIS Indoors information on the ribbon. That's just a simple example. We can do more than that. So ArcGIS Online and Portal have the Portal SDK. We have lots of different partners, developers who have used that to create some really intriguing and frankly apps that I can't live without, like GeoJob, for example. So that's another opportunity for innovation. I mean, there are indoor-specific workflows to publishing these services, to creating access for certain groups. We want to leverage what other people have already built, obviously, but there's also more room for innovation here, potentially. Now, for web apps themselves, we've built our web app on the Esri JavaScript API. In the past, we started out with 4.x, kind of the early versions, because we wanted to get the 3D support. Now we've actually started building on the JavaScript API 4.6. We've been working really closely. Lakshmi has been working with the JavaScript API team. Also Ethan Zhu, I'm not sure if he's here or not. I think he had to go back. Those guys have been working really closely with Renee Rubalcava, Julie Powell, different people on the ArcGIS, on the JavaScript API team to make sure that we're kind of following best practices in the web app that we're creating. We're also leveraging some of their work. If you guys are familiar with the application base, that used to be called the application boilerplate, but essentially it allows you to take a JavaScript API template and make it available as an ArcGIS Online template. So when you create a 2D web map, you publish it to ArcGIS Online, you get the option to share that with a template that's specific to ArcGIS Indoors. That's pretty, it's attractive to us, include as part of a product. So we try to roll that into the application itself. So what does that mean for you guys? Well, these are standard things that we've included in the web app for now. We just use the JavaScript API. You guys would be able to potentially, this is all still up for debate, potentially take the application that we provide as part of the product and then extend that in some way. We'll take a look at that in a little bit when we look at the web application. You also, of course, have the option to build from scratch. So that's what we did. We've worked with the JavaScript API to make things like floor awareness work. I'll show you an example of that here in just a minute. And so for mobile apps, I put on here, we have a partner that we're working with for indoor positioning. And I just want to mention it at this point, and we'll talk about that maybe here in a little bit. But the Esri Location Smart Selector is something we're looking at to support various and sundry IPS providers. In the future, that could be something that you guys might want to keep an eye out for. I don't know exactly what our plans are, but, throw it out there. So if you're interested in that, certainly come by the ArcGIS Indoors booth or come up here at the end of the session and ask some questions. We'll see what we can do to get those answered for you. So looking specifically on the desktop a little deeper, with Python tools, you can script together, obviously, analysis tools that already exist, or you can build some from scratch. You can use these to automate data management processes. Anybody who's worked with Python on the desktop, this is how you get things done, right? So if you want to take something we provide in Pro, customize it, or make it better, this is how you do it. You can also automate common workflows. You can turn that into a button instead of a painful process. One of my personal favorite things about scripting in Python. And you can also use the Pro SDK again to kind of extend the ribbon items or to create new panels that you could use to solve some of these things. Now, one of the things I want to call attention to here is there's also the opportunity for connectors. And what I mean by connectors is when you're defining indoor content, in a lot of cases you have like ERP systems or CRM systems. If you can connect to that information, it really adds a ton of value to the indoor information. So if you have business-specific value that you can bring in, whether it's for work orders or a customer relations management system that manages all the employee information in a single place, you could bring that in and maybe use that to solve a workflow. Well, a lot of these right now, a lot of industry standard providers, they all have SDKs. We haven't really done any work to use those SDKs to create connectors into the ArcGIS Indoors ecosystem. So that's an area where you guys could step in. That might be something to look at in terms of building these connectors to these third-party data sets. That could help you and help your customers as well. So in terms of the cloud or portal, ArcGIS Online, you can automate service updates. There's a lot of things you can do to automate maintenance tasks, update services, kind of automated behind the scenes. Update map packages when changes happen in Pro. Just click a button, press, and it updated on the portal or ArcGIS Online. So in the web, I've already kind of covered some of this. We use the JavaScript API 4.6 currently with our web application. And I'll kind of give you guys a little bit of back. I used to be a JavaScript developer in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. And I can tell you that everything has changed. I knew enough to be dangerous. I got some applications, out on Esri.com and did some work in the past. The learning curve for using 4.x with JSX, TypeScript, that kind of stuff, it's pretty steep. So I think it's not a far-fetched analogy to say, somebody like me, just forget everything you know about JavaScript and then just start fresh with, TypeScript and JSX. Thankfully, I haven't had to do that. We have some very much more talented JavaScript developers than me working on this project. But if you're into that and that's what you do, there's an opportunity for innovation. So we encourage you guys to, again, talk with us this week. Let us know what you think are good places where we can provide some information to you to help you guys run with what we provide. One of the things we're looking at in the JavaScript application itself is the ability to take what we refer to loosely as components and subcomponents and use kind of we call it a model internally. But basically what it means is all the different components in the app can talk to the other components. So if you change something in a floor picker, it can also be reflected in the search dialog. If you change something in the search dialog, it can also change the map. So we're trying to do our homework to make things easy for you guys to innovate. We'll look at that a little bit more here in just a bit. It's brand new. There's functionality getting added to this every week. So it's still under development. So any input you give us now could have a lot of impact in kind of how we move this thing forward. So again, this is my hope to make this a conversation. Instead of me pushing the developer story to you, we want to work with you guys and help craft that developer story as we move forward. We have some ideas, but we're going to fine-tune those this week. Yeah, so the basic API is in the backlog. This is something we have as a target for when we release this. We want to be able to support developers to extend the application we provide and to make it easier to start from scratch if that's what you want to do and build one. So another thing we're building into the application is the idea of configuration from an external file. So what this means for us is that somebody in Pro can not only decide what kind of services they want to publish, 2D and 3D services, they can also decide how they want to configure the app when somebody's using that service or when somebody's logged in with a specific username and password or as part of a certain group in ArcGIS Online. And the way we're doing that is through an external configuration file. So there's another opportunity for, not so much starting from scratch with a brand new application, but maybe tweaking what we provide and being able to get in there and make some changes. So that's an easy way to kind of change the experience. You can hide, at a minimum, just show and hide different elements of the app. Turn off routing or turn it on. If you don't want people to be able to do point-to-point routing in the app, you turn it off. So that's kind of a simple way to get started in it. We also want to provide some basic themes. So I mentioned kind of this idea of components and subcomponents. We want it to be easy to basically take some of the styling that we use internally for the application and then tweak that a little bit. So if you're Texas A&M, you may want to make it maroon. If you're Tulane, you make it green. So yeah, so we want to provide that to you guys, and there's opportunity there to come up with new skins for different customers. Moving on to the mobile application, here we have some similar to the web application. There's the opportunity to modify these config files for the base application. Too early to say what the developer story is with the starting from our iOS or Android application. Stay tuned on that. We kind of need a chance to noodle on that a little bit more, and then we'll probably have more around the user conference time frame. Of course, you can also start from scratch with a new Indoors app. You can use the iOS runtime or the Android runtime. That's what we did. So we start with the runtimes. We hook it in with the mobile map package. The mobile map package contains everything you need to do point-to-point routing or to display individual floors in a building or to do searches for people, places, or things on the campus. So some caution. Indoors support is still evolving. This is a relatively new technology in the ArcGIS platform, and we find a lot of bugs. We find a lot of bugs, we get them fixed, and part of it is getting back to one of my original statements here, just having that much data stratified in a really tight space where everything's really close to each other, having the need to kind of slice that information in different ways. The indoors environment is a challenging place to map, and it's a challenging place to build applications. So, we work, like I said, with the JavaScript API team with our web application. We work with the desktop team. When we find an issue, we work to try to increase this idea of what we refer to as floor awareness across the entire platform. That's going to continue to improve, obviously, as we get closer and closer to a product once we've been out for a while. But just a word of caution that it's still early. So there's still issues to work around. A little bit more about mobile and ELSS. I'm not really going to labor this too much other than to say, GPS doesn't work indoors. So if you want to find your location inside of a building, you have to use another solution. And there are as many IPS solutions as there are, there's a lot of them. So you can't hardly throw a rock in Silicon Valley without hitting some startup who's doing it. Yeah.
I just want to point out on this that the goal of the iOS and Android efforts is that it will be IPS agnostic. So the developer opportunity here is really to let us know what your customers are expecting if we're not supporting it at that time.
So this is actually how I came into Indoors. So I used to do some prototype work with Wi-Fi triangulation, with iBeacons, Estimote, and others, and did some prototype work. And man, it'd be great if there was a single solution to rule them all in IPS, but there really isn't. So a lot of people take a best of breed approach because they get something, they get excited about it, they find out that it doesn't quite work as advertised. But depending on the space and what you need to, how accurate you need to be, there's a lot of different solutions to get that accuracy. So, again, come and talk to us either at the kiosk or up at the front after the session. We can cover that. So that's enough with the slides. So we'll go into now a tour. And I'm flying solo for this. I thought I would have a co-pilot. I would love to show you guys the desktop portion of this, but unfortunately I don't have it set up. And the guy who does is not here. So again, come by the booth. We can show you all kinds of stuff there. We do have it set up on the machine there at the kiosk, so we can walk you through that process a little bit. The gist of it is, though, we have increasing automation with being able to start with data. For now, it's a CAD drawing is a good place to start. We're also working with the core teams on, you guys have probably heard about some of the directory to BIM files, Revit files. That's important to Indoors for obvious reasons. We want to stay on top of that. We want to provide a mechanism for people to be able to start with that kind of data as well. Currently you can, but you have to go through an intermediate data set. It's kind of a two-step process. It'd be awesome when it's a direct read, so stay tuned. But basically, you take the information in, you create maps and scenes in ArcGIS Pro, and you can publish those out as mobile map packages or 2D web maps. In this case, that's exactly what we did with the Palm Springs Convention Center. So we're looking at this is our latest JavaScript API application. The ArcGIS Indoors team started with CAD drawings from Palm Springs Convention Center, brought those into the desktop, added some attribution, and in addition, we brought in some stuff like if you look at the events here, we can see all of the things that are happening. And if I look at Wednesday, it's not necessarily in chronological order, sorted in another way. But we can see all the sessions that are here for Wednesday. And again, this is a pre-alpha application, so we're still working on trying to fine-tune some of this experience. But it works. And we can also do some things like retail and services. Right now, we currently have just the one ATM. You can also find places and things if you're looking for an exhibit hall. And let's see here, Oasis 3. you can click on that and it'll zoom to that feature.
So Jeff, if maybe I'll pick up some slack on the data creation side of it. So the idea here is that the web map that Jeff, the underlying web map in this application carries along with it the necessary configuration information to populate that info panel that you're seeing there. So, I mean, the app that you're seeing here is pre-alpha at this point. If you take a look at the iOS beta sample app, you'll get an idea of where this application development effort is headed. So that when this app opens up with the underlying web map, you know, it's going to look at the configuration file that comes along with it that is packaged together in Pro by that map maker. And so it's looking at the data, and the data is saying, well, the categories that my users want to search on are these categories, and the level 1 categories look like this, and here's the level 2 categories. And then, oh, by the way, here's the attachment for the icons that we'll actually use in the application itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. So most of the things that you see here in this app have come from the data itself. So these user interface icons are actually embedded. And that makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because we're kind of defining what the POIs are for the Palm Springs Convention Center and for the Dev Summit in the desktop. So we can kind of embed these and kind of keep that experience consistent, whether you're using this browser-based application or whether you're using the mobile app. So just a note about something I said earlier about how we use components and subcomponents. Each one of these things that kind of flies out, so we have a layer list here. My touchpad will work. We have a floor picker. I'll look at that in a little bit more depth here in a second. And this kind of side panel, right now it's focused on search, both a POI-based search and also a text box search. These are components. So for example, this side panel would be a component. The POI search is a subcomponent. Each one of these icons is another subcomponent. So the idea is that these are stateless pieces of the application. And what I mean by that is that you can determine what data you want to put into each one of these components. So it's not like hardwired to do some specific job. We want it to be just kind of a generic building block in the web application. And the data that's going to populate that panel is going to come from the actual data itself, from the services from ArcGIS Online. So just a quick note about that. And an example, so we're looking at the Palm Springs Convention Center here. It's not that interesting from an indoor perspective because it's only one floor, right? The entire thing. Now, if we look at the Esri campus, whoop, this is backward from my Mac. So if we look at the Esri campus, we can see all sorts of information here as well. We can click on spaces and find out who's there. In this case is no one. We can also do this POI-based search, so we can see retail and services. We see a few other things. We've got a post office right there. We got some restaurants, a cafe in Bingerong. So the search works basically the same. One of the things that's unique about this, though, let me zoom out a little bit. So in the past, in the early days of ArcGIS Indoors, back when we had just the campus viewer, this thing's jumpy. There it goes. So back when we just had the campus viewer, when you wanted to display floors across a campus, you got one floor. That's it. So you could display floor 3 across the entire campus, and that's what you got. You didn't get any options about it or anything like that. So one of the things that we've worked with the core software teams to implement is the idea of floor awareness. So now if I wanted to, I can change the floors across campus still. Certainly that works. But if I want to go a little deeper and I want a little bit more, kind of a power user experience, I could turn on individual floors and individual buildings. So right now I'm just looking at the second floor of building M. I could also change that to the third floor of building M. Now if I wanted to, I could add another building and another floor from that building. So I'll add O1 here, and then I'll check the box, and then that shows up. So this is just kind of an example of us working with the ArcGIS platform teams just to make sure that some of the use cases, the really basic stuff that we need to support, is supported in our SDKs and in our products. Let's see here. Another thing, it's kind of hot off the press, that we have available now is, because it's a browser-based application, we can look at either 2D or 3D. So I'm going to click on 3D and cross my fingers behind my back here, and hopefully this Looks good so far. So far, hey, look at that. Good stuff. Yay. Yeah, we got a question?
Are these components like widgets that you will also set in the web app?
So the question is, will these widgets become components that we could use in Web App Builder? Maybe. That's not something that we have in the short term. I intentionally avoid using the term widget because I want to avoid confusion with the Web App Builder.
That's why my question. I understand it's now a separate concept.
Yeah, so I mean, at some point in the future, we may look at trying to integrate, some of the experience. There's a lot of things to really like about Web App Builder. We're trying to kind of do, right now, the differences in using indoor data versus standard, regular old GIS data, for lack of a better term, is big enough that we kind of need to focus on solving the indoor problems right now. And I think that it's, right now, the idea is that anybody that would use this application and try to extend it, we want to provide them the tools that they need specific to indoor data.
I think the big challenge is there's not enough to, they wouldn't, if I had some of these widgets that were wabified, right?
Yeah.
There's not enough to communicate with anything else right now. So, I mean, you would be handicapped going into Web App Builder. So I think as this matures, there will be more pieces to make it worth the while moving into the Web App Builder framework. But right now, we'll get these, these core capabilities done right. They'll expand through user input, your input, and I would imagine first, a potential atomization of the key pieces of this, so that you can add in, other components, not necessarily from like the WAB universe, and then maybe it graduates to WAB. I'm just speculating on a future roadmap.
Yeah, there's the map has got many twists and turns and possible routes to that destination. I think right now we're just trying to focus on, let's start with a clean slate. Like, what do we want to support? We want to be able to allow people to get a pretty advanced starting point with an application. But, I mean, as we know, this is Esri, right? So, I mean, we're going to do the best we can and then provide a developer SDK for people to put this into whatever specific workflow that they need to support.
My question was based on my organization is 90% of all our GIS data is indoors. So
Oh, wow.
With core aware company. So we are building almost for 10 years now our own core switchers in every FPU. So in ArcMap, in ArcGIS, in anything.
Let's get together. Let's talk. Let's palaver.
I already talked to Craig.
Okay. Yeah, great. Any other questions? So that's kind of the web app story. I'm probably forgetting something, but that's as it is right now. So let me switch. I'm actually going to start fresh here. So this is the ArcGIS Indoors mobile application. And man, look at that IPS signal. That's strong. Nice job surveying in here, guys. So yeah, here I am in Santa Rosa. And you can see kind of the fruits of Craig's labor. We went through kind of really quickly what that process is to go from, basically we started with CAD files for the convention center here. You just saw that in the web application. Now here we see it as a mobile map package in a native iOS application. There's you'll notice a lot of similar user interface elements. All those icons along the bottom look really similar to the ones in the web app. We're trying to provide that kind of consistent user experience across the different applications. You can pan and zoom and twist and do all kinds of fun stuff. You can see my IPS signal there. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you see those green bars. That's an IPS confidence indicator. So basically right now it's pretty confident that I'm in this spot. And it's pretty accurate. I mean, there's a post there and another post over there. I feel kind of like, has anybody ever seen a baseball game at Fenway Park? It feels a little bit like that from here. I've got like the obstructed view of the audience. So we have also the ability to switch floors. Again, here in Palm Springs, there's only one. We could show you Redlands, but my blue dot would be way off. So that floor switcher is there. You can actually make it either blue dot centric, or if I do a long touch on it, you notice that it went from blue to white. What that allows me to do now is to explore other places on campus. So I could switch the floors and it wouldn't automatically snap back to my location. Now if I decide I want to do that, I can just click on the crosshair and it'll snap me back to whatever my current IPS location is.
Hey, Jeff,
Yeah.
like one thing I would want to point out to the group is that if you were in a multi-story building with positioning enabled, the app would want to filter you to the correct floor based on that signal. So that would be automated. You wouldn't have to sit there and go, oh, I'm on the 3rd floor. So and you
Right.
could actually watch it change as you walk up the stairs.
Yeah, that's a good point. So there's also different modes for, you can see right now I've got the compass showing. If I tap it one more time, then it orients to my phone, whichever direction it's pointing. So one of the things I mentioned is getting access to the sensors on the device. That's one of the main reasons to go native on a mobile device. So in an indoor environment, that's even more important because you can use the accelerometer, you can use the compass to kind of build some intelligence into your current location and kind of make some educated guesses about what it is that you're doing. If you're walking down a corridor at a consistent speed and the IPS signal jumps 30 meters outside the building, you can kind of use some logic to say, well, that's probably an aberration. Let's not just jump right out there outside the building. Let's kind of keep walking down this corridor. So we can use some of that in the application itself. And then if I tap it again, it kind of goes back, orients to north. So some of the things we can do here, obviously we have a search. If I want to search for, say, Santa Rosa, then I can see all the different things that are happening in this room. I can also, let's see here, I'll go to places and things. I can see the different rooms here. I can see the information disk. If I'm looking for a restroom, I can find one of those. That would have come in handy right before the session here. Santa Rosa, here we are, right? So I can click on those things from a POI-based search, or I can do a textual search. Once I find something, obviously I can zoom to it. I just did that. I can also see the attribute information, and you can see essentially like kind of the data level attribute information. You can also see the related items down here at the bottom. So this is related to L1, which is the only level that we have here. There's also other things that are going on in this room over the course of the week, so I can see those things. If I want to find out more about scientific programming with the SciPy stack, I could tap on that and find some more information. Another thing I can do is if I find, say the bulb burns out in the projector and I want to report an issue, I can click on 311 and this opens a Survey 123 application where I can report that issue right here from the app. Now if I scroll down a little bit, I can see that it autofills a lot of these input values with information from the app itself. Now why is that important? Well, at Esri, we have a lot of different conference rooms, and the names of those conference rooms are a little interesting. A lot of it is designed to be supported in Outlook, but they have names that start with an asterisk. Some have an asterisk, some don't have an asterisk. Some are, the ones in Boulder are slightly different than the ones in Redlands. So we can actually take like the official name in the database and put that into the 311 report that we're going to do for that. Another thing, obviously, if my blue dot is here, let me go find another location. Let's go to Pueblo B. And if now that's the focus, I can see the information for Pueblo B, and I can get directions from my location to Pueblo. So I'll zoom in here so you can see that. And it's kind of an interesting process to create the routes that we use either in the web application or in the mobile application. If you want to know more about that, stop by the kiosk. We can walk you through the whole process. But basically, it creates kind of like a circuit board. We take all the possible destinations here in the Palm Springs Convention Center. There's like a centroid for Santa Rosa and another one for Pueblo. And we take all of those and we create a network data set that connects all those different destinations here in Palm Springs. And we pre-solve all the routes. So you notice that was pretty snappy when I solved the route. It just came right back. It's solving against the network that's in the mobile map package here. So basically, I just have to look up that network route. I don't have to solve it on the fly. it's all pre-solved ahead of time. So this is another one of those problems that we've tackled in Indoors and we've tried to make usable. So, anything else, Pat?
Just want to correct one thing that you just mentioned. So the network data set is on the device. And so we are actually making a call to solve the route directly using the SDK. So we don't actually pre-calculate all the routes, but we use the function of like generic ArcGIS to solve it right there for the customer. And we did make a deliberate decision not to use a routing service, though, just because of the time lag. I guess another thing to point out on the network component, it's imagine taking the floor plans for your buildings. We have a tool that will be part of the Pro product, and it'll iterate through all the floor plans. It'll overlay like a fishnet grid aligned to the layout of the building. And then imagine putting an X through each grid point. So it has this tetrachus grid. And then we cookie cutter out the traversable areas from the non-traversable areas. And using those same points of interest, we start thinning that network data set because we say, well, I want you to find the other POIs within, 1 minute or 20 meters or 50 meters of me. And then we just cut everything else out. So that's the automated process to do it. There is a partially manual part where we have to connect staircases from one floor to the next, though. Oh, and then Marcotte.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to that network data set. The mobile network data set include OD metrics as well, so you know distance from any point to any point.
Yep.
And so you can do the distance ranking when you scroll down to see what near you, right? And we are working toward using that. There is a basic licensing for routing, but when you want to do closest facilities and service area on the mobile, it needs a different level of licensing.
Yeah. Maybe, like one thing that's really neat, I mean, I don't know, maybe Marcotte and I think it's neat. So Jeff, can you show like the search results? Like, well, not search results, but get out of the routing mode. And then let's just focus it on you for a minute. Like, just go to the map and say, oh, center on blue dot, right? And then, okay, so now that we're centered, jump into the places and things category real quick. And then just make sure to refresh a couple times. All right, so now I call this the ego monster mode, where I only care about myself and the things around me. So right now, Marcotte, how would you describe what we're doing here?
Yeah, so we have to calculate distance from the center of the map to every point of interest point on the mobile map, map package, and that's a time consuming. And for the small facility like this, we don't have too many of those, which can happen pretty quickly. For large facilities, we may have 10,000 points or even more to calculate, and that's pretty challenging too. If you want to scroll down on this page, and you can scroll infinitely, right, and take that calculations in asynchronous and on another thread, and that really, time consuming and can kill the battery. So if you have OD metrics available and you have the right licensing level, you don't need to do that. You just do the ranking.
And this is using a pretty rough algorithm. It's as the crow flies, plus some math to indicate, oh, if it's on a different floor, add some more distance, and if it's in a different building and a different floor, add more distance, just to push, less accurate results to the bottom of the list. So as Marcotte was saying, we're continuing to improve this. Once we get the OD matrix in there, either as a service or on the device, we'll know exactly how far it is. Yeah. Oops.
So I think we're almost out of time. We got about 6 minutes. I would just encourage you guys to, let me bring that URL up again. If there's any more questions, we'd love to take them at this time. Anyone? Well, if not, I encourage you to definitely come by the booth, talk to us. The developer story for ArcGIS Indoors is evolving. So if you have use cases specifically that you've talked to customers about or that you would like to see, let us know. I mean, we'll take some notes, we'll take it back, We'll get a business card. Stay in touch. Thank you.